I never thought a car maintenance warning would destroy my 15-year marriage. But when the mechanic said, "Check your camera," my entire world crumbled. What my dashboard recorded wasn't just my wife driving my car. It was evidence of a double life so shocking, I still can't believe the woman I loved was capable of such betrayal. Trust is like a house of cards. One wrong move, and the whole thing comes tumbling down. Most folks don't realize how fragile it really is until they're standing in the rubble wondering what the hell happened. I'm sharing my story not because I want your pity, but because maybe it'll help someone out there see the warning signs I missed. Because let me tell you, when it comes to betrayal, ignorance isn't bliss, it's just delayed pain. My name is Wade Mills. I'm 53 years old, and until last month, I thought I had it all figured out. A successful business, a beautiful home in Portland, and what I believed was a rock-solid marriage of 15 years to my wife, Tara, who's 49. I've always prided myself on being a straight shooter, the kind of man who says what he means and means what he says. I expected the same from the people in my life, especially my wife. I run an international consulting firm that specializes in agricultural technology, helping farmers across the globe implement systems that maximize their yields. It's fulfilling work, but it means I'm on the road about 2 weeks each month. Sometimes in California, other times as far as Japan or Brazil. The travel can be grueling, but it pays well, and I've always made sure Tara wanted for nothing. When I'm home, I make every moment count. Date nights, weekend trips to the coast, quiet evenings by the fire pit in our backyard. I've always believed that quality trumps quantity when it comes to time together. And for 15 years, that seemed to be working just fine. Or so I thought. I had just returned from a particularly exhausting 10-day trip to Argentina. Multiple flight delays, difficult clients, and a bout of food poisoning had left me drained. All I wanted was to sleep in my own bed and spend a quiet weekend recuperating with my wife. The morning after I got back, Tara was still asleep when I decided to take my Audi R8, my pride and joy, out for a quick drive to clear my head. The moment I turned the key, something felt off. The engine made a rough, grinding noise I'd never heard before, and a warning light flashed on the dashboard. This didn't make sense. I'd had the car serviced right before my trip, and it had been running perfectly. I went back inside and found Tara in the kitchen, brewing coffee. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she was wearing the silky blue robe I'd bought her for Christmas. "Did you drive my car while I was gone?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. She barely looked up from her phone. "Yeah, I took it to meet Stephanie for lunch. Mine was low on gas. That was it. No elaboration, no apology for potentially damaging my car. I let it slide. After all, it was just a car, and she was my wife. If she needed to use it, that wasn't a problem. The issue was with a mechanic who'd clearly done a shoddy job on the servicing. Little did I know that simple question would be the thread that, when pulled, would unravel my entire life. I pulled into Precision Auto, my go-to shop for the past decade, with steam practically coming out of my ears. Dave, the owner, had personally handled my Audi's maintenance for years. I paid top dollar for premium service, and this is what I got: an engine that sounded like it was gargling rocks. The place was busier than usual, with several cars on lifts and mechanics hustling around. I spotted Dave hunched over the engine of a Mercedes, hands blackened with grease. "Dave," I called out, not bothering to hide my frustration. "We need to talk about my R8. He looked up, wiping his hands on a rag. "Wait, good to see you. Back from Argentina already?" "Just got in yesterday," I replied, popping the hood, "and found this waiting for me. Want to explain why my car sounds like a blender full of nails after you supposedly serviced it?" Dave frowned, immediately moving toward my car. Without saying a word, he bent over the engine, his expert eyes scanning every component. I stood there with my arms crossed, foot tapping against the concrete floor. A few minutes of silence passed, interrupted only by the occasional click of his tools. "I don't understand," he muttered, more to himself than to me. "Everything looks exactly as it should." "Well, something's clearly wrong," I snapped. "You're the expert here. Figure it out." Dave nodded, continuing his inspection methodically. I watched as he connected a diagnostic computer and began running tests. 15 minutes passed, and my irritation was starting to give way to genuine concern. If Dave couldn't immediately spot the issue, maybe this was more serious than I thought. Finally, he straightened up and gave me a look I couldn't quite read. There was something odd in his expression, a mixture of discomfort and what almost seemed like pity. "Wade," he said, his voice unnaturally even, "were you aware your car has been recording driving footage?" I blinked, caught off guard. "What are you talking about?" "Your Audi," he explained, pointing to a small device near the rearview mirror. "It has a dash cam system that records when the car is in use. It's part of the security package we installed last year." I vaguely remember Dave mentioning this during the installation, but I hadn't given it much thought since then. "So what?" Dave hesitated, fidgeting with the diagnostic tool in his hands. "Look, I might want to get involved in personal matters, but you might want to check those recordings. They might explain why your car is acting up." Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. "What exactly are you implying, Dave?" He shook his head. "I'm not implying anything. Just suggesting you take a look at the footage before we tear apart this engine. The car keeps a log of every trip, including dates and times." Dave showed me how to access the recordings through my phone using the Audi app, something I'd set up but rarely used. As he walked away to help another customer, I sat in the driver's seat and began scrolling through the recent footage. The most recent recordings were from my drive to the shop, and before that, my brief spin this morning. But as I scrolled further back, I found several recordings from when I was in Argentina, days when my car should have been sitting untouched in our garage. My heart began to pound as I tapped on the first video. The first video was innocent enough, Tara driving my Audi out of the garage around noon. The timestamp showed it was 3 days after I'd left for Argentina. She was alone, headed somewhere with purpose, her sunglasses perched on her head. This matched her story about meeting Stephanie for lunch. But then came the next recording from later that same day. Tara wasn't alone. Stephanie was in the passenger seat, along with another woman I didn't recognize in the back. They were all dressed up, laughing about something I couldn't hear. The camera angle didn't capture much of the interior conversation, but their body language spoke volumes, excited, animated, like teenagers heading to a concert. I frowned. Why would she need to dress up just for lunch? And she never mentioned having another friend along. I continued scrolling through the videos. Over the next several days, Tara took my car out 6 more times while I was away. Sometimes alone, sometimes with Stephanie. Nothing too concerning yet, but definitely more used than the single lunch outing she'd mentioned. Then I found it. Footage from 4 nights before my return. Tara pulled into what looked like a hotel valet area. The timestamp read 10:37 p.m. The fancy Westbrook Hotel downtown, a place known for its upscale bar and nightclub. "What the hell?" I muttered, leaning closer to the screen. In the next clip, time-stamped nearly 3 hours later, Tara returned to the car. But she wasn't alone. A man I'd never seen before walked with her, his hand resting casually on the small of her back. He was tall, early 40s maybe, with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you look good. Tara was laughing at something he said, her body angled toward his in that unmistakable way. My throat went dry. I told myself there could be an explanation. Maybe a business contact. Maybe Stephanie's boyfriend or husband. But as I watched them reach the car, he opened the driver's side door for her, then leaned in and kissed her. Not a friendly peck, but the kind of kiss that leaves no room for misinterpretation. The kind of kiss that only happens between lovers. My hand started to shake. I forced myself to keep watching. The next clip showed them driving to an apartment complex I didn't recognize. They parked, and both got out. The final footage from that night came from the following morning. Tara, alone, driving back home. She looked tired but satisfied, checking her reflection in the rearview mirror and fixing her lipstick. "Everything all right, Wade?" Dave's voice startled me. He was standing by the car door, a concerned look on his face. I quickly locked my phone. "I need to keep the car here for diagnostics," I said, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. "Can you give me a loaner?" Dave's eyes held a knowing sympathy. "Of course. Take all the time you need." 20 minutes later, I was driving a nondescript Honda back toward my house, my mind racing even faster than my pulse. 15 years of marriage, and I'd never once doubted Tara's fidelity. Now, in the span of 20 minutes, my entire reality had shifted. I called my office and told them I needed another day off. Then I parked a block away from my house and sat there, staring at nothing, trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. One thing was certain. I needed to see the rest of those recordings before confronting Tara. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with, and I needed to know how long this had been going on. I spent the next day in a fog, going through the motions at work while my mind replayed those videos on an endless loop. I've closed million-dollar deals under intense pressure, but focusing on a simple email now felt like trying to read underwater. The image of Tara kissing that man kept ambushing my thoughts when I least expected it. Around noon, I called Dave at the shop. "I need access to all the footage," I told him. "Can you download everything from the past month onto a flash drive?" "Sure thing, Wade," he replied, his tone sympathetic but professional. "I'll have it ready by 5. After collecting the flash drive, I checked into a Marriott downtown instead of going home. I couldn't face Tara yet. Not when my emotions were this raw. Not when I still had more questions than answers. I ordered room service, cracked open a minibar scotch, and settled in for what would be the most painful movie night of my life. The footage went back further than I expected, nearly 6 weeks. Most recordings were innocuous. Tara running errands, driving to her yoga studio, meeting friends for coffee. But as I kept watching, patterns emerged that made my stomach turn. Twice a week, like clockwork, she would dress up and head to that same hotel bar. Sometimes alone, sometimes with Stephanie. And on 3 separate occasions before the night I'd already witnessed, she left with the same man. Each time following the same routine: drinks, laughter, that intimate body language, and then back to what I now assumed was his apartment. "Son of a bitch," I muttered, pouring another drink with shaking hands. The worst part? During one of those nights, I had called her from Argentina. I remember the conversation perfectly. I'd asked what she was up to, and she'd said she was in bed reading, just missing me and looking forward to my return. The timestamp on the video showed she was in another man's bed when she took that call. The lies were so seamless, so natural. How long had this been going on? Was this her first affair, or just the first one I'd caught? I dug deeper, methodically documenting dates, times, and locations. If this was headed where I thought it was, I wanted concrete evidence, not just my word against hers. Oregon was a no-fault divorce state, but I'd be damned if I was going to let her blindside me a second time. Around midnight, I found another bombshell. 3 days before my Argentina trip, Tara had taken my car to a jewelry store, La Belle Époque, one of the most expensive places in Portland. She emerged an hour later with a small bag. I'd received no gift. There had been no special occasion. Whatever she bought that day wasn't for me. The next morning, fighting a scotch-induced headache, I called my longtime friend Ryan, who happened to be a private investigator. "I need your help, buddy," I said when he answered. "And I need this kept completely under wraps." Ryan, to his credit, didn't ask questions over the phone. "I'm free for lunch. Miller's Pub at noon." "Perfect," I replied, already calculating my next moves. I wasn't some chump who would confront his wife half-cocked, have a shouting match, and then get sweet-talked into forgiveness. Tara had played me for a fool, but those days were over. If she wanted to blow up our marriage, fine. But I'd be the one controlling the detonator. Ryan and I sat in the back corner of Miller's Pub, the lunch crowd providing perfect cover for our conversation. He'd order a club sandwich. I couldn't stomach more than black coffee. "So let me get this straight," Ryan said, keeping his voice low. "You've got video evidence of your wife stepping out on you multiple times, and you want to know how deep this thing goes before you confront her?" I nodded, sliding the flash drive across the table. "There's at least 6 weeks of footage here. Same guy multiple nights. But I need to know who he is, and if there's more I don't know about." Ryan pocketed the drive. "Consider it done. I'll run facial recognition through our database. See if we can ID this Romeo. What about your finances? Have you checked for unusual spending patterns?" "Not yet," I admitted. "That's next on my list." "Do it ASAP," Ryan advised. "Affairs leave paper trails, hotel charges, gifts, extra gasoline, fancy restaurant bills that never made it home. Check your credit card statements going back at least a year." The thought of combing through a year's worth of financial records made my head throb, but Ryan was right. I needed the full picture. "What about confronting her?" I asked. "Part of me wants to walk in the door and call her out right now." Ryan shook his head emphatically. "Worst move you could make. Right now, you have the advantage. She has no clue you're onto her. The minute you confront her, she'll start covering her tracks, maybe even try to flip the script and make you out to be the bad guy. So what's your advice?" "Give me 3 days," he said. "I'll identify the guy, document their meetings, and build you a solid case. Meanwhile, you gather the financial evidence and contact a good lawyer, quietly. Once we have everything in order, then you can decide how to proceed. I ran a hand over my face, feeling the stubble I neglected to shave. And until then, I just act like everything's normal. Exactly, Ryan confirmed. Go home, be pleasant but distant. Blame it on jet lag or work stress if she notices. Don't give her any reason to suspect you're investigating her. The thought of playing house with Tara made my skin crawl, but I knew Ryan was right. Strategic thinking had built my business, and it would get me through this personal disaster too. That evening, I finally returned home. Tara was in the kitchen preparing dinner, wearing the blue cashmere sweater I'd bought her for her birthday. She smiled when I walked in. That same warm smile that used to make my day better. Now, just another prop in her performance. There you are, she exclaimed, coming over to kiss my cheek. I was getting worried. Long day at the office? Yeah, I replied, forcing a half smile. Catching up after the trip. Something smells good. Coco Vin, she said. Your favorite. Thought you could use a nice meal after all that travel. I poured myself a glass of wine, wondering if she'd cooked special meals for him too. In our house. Maybe even in our bed when I was traveling. The thought made me grip the glass, so tightly I was surprised it didn't shatter. How's your day been? I asked, the mundane question feeling like sandpaper in my throat. As Tara launched into some story about her yoga class, I studied her face, this stranger I'd been married to for 15 years. She was good, I had to give her that. Not a hint of guilt, not a flicker of discomfort as she spun her web of lies. I smiled and nodded in all the right places, all while thinking, enjoy it while it lasts, sweetheart. Your time is running out. 2 days into my charade of normalcy, Ryan called me during my lunch break. I've got something. Can you meet at my office at 3? I made an excuse to leave work early and arrived at Ryan's downtown office 15 minutes ahead of schedule. My stomach was in knots, part of me desperate for answers, another part dreading what I was about to learn. Ryan's office reflected his personality. Organized, practical, no frills. He motioned for me to sit, then turned his monitor so we could both see it. His name is Jason Myers, Ryan said without preamble. 41 years old, works as a financial advisor at Pinnacle Wealth Management. On the screen was a professional headshot of the man I'd seen kissing my wife. Seeing him in high resolution, with his polished smile and calculated charm, made my blood boil. Here's where it gets interesting, Ryan continued, clicking through a series of photos. I ran surveillance yesterday. They met for lunch at Carmine's. Very public, very cozy. They weren't hiding anything. The photos showed Tara and Jason at a corner table, holding hands across the table, leaning in close to talk. In one particularly gut-wrenching shot, he was feeding her a bite of dessert. People who saw them would assume they were a couple, Ryan said quietly. Not an affair, a legitimate couple. The implication hit me like a freight train. How long? My voice sounded strained, even in my own ears. Ryan hesitated. Based on what I've gathered, at least a year, possibly longer. A year. While I was flying around the world, building our future, my wife was building a relationship with another man. The betrayal went deeper than I'd imagined. There's more, Ryan said, pulling up another window. I've been monitoring their phone communications. Since yesterday, they've exchanged 27 text messages and 2 calls, including this. He played an audio recording. Tara's voice filled the office. I miss you already. When can I see you again? Then Jason's reply. Tomorrow night? He's usually buried in work until at least 8 on Thursdays. He, not Wade, not my husband. Just like I was some inconvenient obstacle in their relationship. Not a human being with feelings. Not her husband of 15 years. She's planning to see him tomorrow night, Ryan concluded. While you're supposedly working late. I sat back, numb. So, she's not just cheating. She's living a double life. Essentially, yes. Ryan pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. I've documented everything. Dates, locations, communications. And I ran a background check on Myers. He's been divorced twice, both times for infidelity. This appears to be his MO, targeting married women. I flipped through the folder, each page another nail in the coffin of my marriage. What about finances? Nothing on your joint accounts, but I check her personal accounts. And based on their conversations, I'd say he's been giving her gifts, expensive ones. That explained the jewelry store visit. My mind flashed to the diamond earrings Tara had been wearing recently, claiming they were just a little something she'd bought herself. Had those been from him? How many other little somethings had he given her with my money? So what now? I asked, closing the folder. Ryan leaned forward. That depends on what you want, Wade. If it's divorce, you've got everything you need. If it's confrontation. He trailed off, letting me fill in the blank. I want the truth, I said. And then I want her gone. I spent the next day locked in my office, laying the groundwork for what was to come. First, I called my lawyer, Frank Holden, a no-nonsense attorney who specialized in high-asset divorces. I'd helped him negotiate a business acquisition years ago, and he owed me a favor. I need an emergency consultation, I told him. Today, if possible. 2 hours later, I sat in Frank's corner office overlooking downtown Portland, sliding Ryan's folder across his mahogany desk. 15 years of marriage, I said, my voice hollow, and I need to end it immediately. Frank reviewed the evidence silently, his expression giving nothing away. When he finally looked up, his eyes held a mix of professional detachment and genuine sympathy. Clean-cut case, he said. Oregon's no fault, but with this level of documented infidelity and potential financial impropriety, we can push for a favorable settlement. He leaned forward. What are your priorities here, Wade? I want it done quickly and cleanly, I replied. She gets nothing beyond what she came into the marriage with. No alimony, no ongoing financial entanglements. Frank nodded, making notes. We'll file for dissolution based on irreconcilable differences, but use the evidence as leverage in settlement negotiations. Have you confronted her yet? Tonight, I said. I want the paperwork ready to go immediately after. By the time I returned home that evening, everything was in place. I'd frozen our joint accounts, secured copies of all our financial records, and had divorce papers ready to be served. Frank had advised me to record the confrontation, Oregon being a one-party consent state, so I had my phone set to capture audio. Tara was in the kitchen when I arrived, chopping vegetables for dinner. She looked up with a smile that now seemed as fake as a $3 bill. You're home early, she said, wiping her hands on a towel. Everything okay? No, I replied simply. Everything is not okay. Sit down, Tara. We need to talk. Something in my tone must have triggered her alarm bells because her smile faltered. What's wrong? I didn't answer. Instead, I took out my phone and played one of the dashboard camera videos, the one showing her and Jason kissing in my car. Her face drained of color as she watched, her body going completely still. Care to explain? I asked when the video ended. She stammered, searching for words. Wait, it's not what it looks like. Stop. I cut her off. It's exactly what it looks like. You've been having an affair with Jason Myers for at least a year. You've been seeing him twice a week while I'm traveling. You've been lying to my face every single day. Her eyes widened in shock at my knowledge of Jason's name and the details of their affair. How did you? Does it matter? I interrupted. What matters is that I know everything. The hotel meetings, the overnight stays at his apartment, the jewelry he's bought you with my money. And I know you're planning to see him again tomorrow night. Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no pain, just cold determination to get through this. Wait, please, she whispered. I made a mistake. I never meant to hurt you. We can work through this. No, we can't, I said firmly. There's no coming back from this level of betrayal. So here's what's going to happen. I've already spoken to my lawyer. I'm filing for divorce, effective immediately. You have two choices. I laid out her options with the detached precision I usually reserve for business negotiations. Option 1, a quick, quiet divorce where she walks away with her personal possessions and a one-time settlement that would give her enough to start over, in exchange for her signature today and her complete discretion. Option 2, I take everything to court, make the evidence public, and fight her for every penny. Your call, I finished. But I need your decision right now. Tara stared at me, mascara running down her cheeks, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. How can you be so cold? She whispered. 15 years together, and you're treating this like a business transaction. You made it a transaction the moment you started sleeping with another man. I replied evenly. I'm just finalizing the paperwork. She tried another approach. moving toward me with a familiar look in her eyes. Wait, please. We can work through this. I'll end it with Jason. We'll go to counseling. I stepped back. Don't. There's nothing you can say or do that will change my mind. You never gave us enough time, she said, her tone shifting to accusatory. Always traveling. Always working. What did you expect? And there it was, the blame shifting I'd been warned about. Somehow this was my fault, not hers. Classic cheater's playbook. I expected loyalty, I said. I expected honesty. I expected the woman I married to honor her vows. Tara collapsed onto a kitchen chair, her shoulders shaking with sobs. I stood silently, waiting for her to collect herself. Finally, she looked up. Want my options again? I repeated them, laying out the terms of both scenarios in clear, unmistakable language. Option 1 was generous enough. She wouldn't struggle financially, but she wouldn't be living the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to either. Option 2 would be a scorched earth campaign that would leave her reputation in tatters and her bank account empty. You have 1 hour to decide, I added, placing the settlement papers on the table. I'll be in my office. Upstairs, I sat at my desk, staring at the framed photo of us from our 10th anniversary trip to Hawaii. We looked happy, genuinely happy. Had she been cheating even then? Had anything in our marriage been real? Exactly 58 minutes later, there was a knock on my office door. Tara stood there, her face pale but composed, holding the signed papers. I'll be out by tomorrow, she said quietly. I nodded, taking the documents. No thank you, no apology, no explanation needed. We were done. The next morning, I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee and watching the movers Tara had hastily arranged load her personal belongings into a truck. She'd taken only what was indisputably hers: clothing, jewelry, personal mementos. Everything else, the furniture, artwork, electronics, she'd left behind. Ryan called as the movers were finishing up. How you holding up? Numb, I admitted, but clear-headed. Frank filed the paperwork this morning. You're doing the right thing, he assured me. Clean break, no lingering drama. Through the window, I watched Tara directing the movers, her face tight with restrained emotion. Not once had she looked toward the house, toward me. It was as if 15 years of marriage could be packed up and driven away without a backward glance. My phone pinged with a text from Jason Myers. We need to talk. So Tara had already run to him. I deleted the message without responding. Later that afternoon, as I was sorting through our joint photo albums, deciding what to keep and what to discard, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find Jason standing on my porch, looking uncomfortable. You've got some nerve, I said, blocking the entrance. 5 minutes, he pleaded. That's all I'm asking. Against my better judgment, I let him in. He stood awkwardly in my living room, hands in his pockets. I didn't know she was married, he said without preamble. I laughed bitterly. Save it. I've seen you both together. You knew exactly who she was and what you were doing. He shook his head. Not at first. She told me she was divorced when we met last year. By the time I found out the truth, I was already. He trailed off, then squared his shoulders. I'm not here to make excuses. I just thought you should know she lies to everyone, not just you. After he left, I poured a scotch and considered his words. It didn't change anything about my decision, but it added another layer to Tara's deception. She hadn't just betrayed me. She'd built an elaborate fantasy world where she could be whoever she wanted with whoever she wanted. I was better off without her. 6 months after signing the divorce papers, I stood on the balcony of my new condo in Seattle, watching the sunset paint the Puget Sound in shades of gold and crimson. After finalizing the divorce, I'd sold our Portland house, expanded my business to the Pacific Northwest, and started fresh in a city where no street corner, no restaurant, no coffee shop held memories of Tara. The divorce had been finalized with surprising speed. Tara never contested anything, never made a scene. According to mutual friends, she'd moved to San Diego with Jason, though their relationship had apparently fizzled within months. Some betrayals, it seemed, couldn't survive in the harsh light of reality. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Dinner still on for tonight? Ryan had been instrumental in helping me through the past months, not just as an investigator, but as a friend who understood that rebuilding wasn't just about new surroundings, but about reclaiming trust in my own judgment. As I typed my reply, I reflected on how much had changed. The rage and humiliation had gradually faded, replaced by a strange sense of gratitude. If not for that car maintenance warning, if not for Dave's hint about the camera footage, I might still be living a lie, married to a woman whose true self I never really knew. The dashboard camera had recorded more than just Tara's betrayal. It had captured the moment my old life ended and forced me to build something new, something authentic. I grabbed my jacket and headed out to meet Ryan and his wife for dinner. There would be good food, honest conversation, and maybe even laughter. There would be no pretense, no deception, no looking over my shoulder wondering what secrets lurked in the shadows. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely optimistic about the future, not because I had all the answers or because the pain had completely vanished, but because I'd finally learned the most important lesson of all. It's better to stand alone in truth than together in lies. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what truly matters.